A piece of land can look just fine on the surface. Green grass, a row of trees, a pretty view from the road, and it can still be a piece of land that will eat your savings whole. I have watched it happen to good people right here in this county, and I have watched it happen to English friends from the city who came out here looking for a place to start fresh. They drove past a for sale sign on a Sunday afternoon, fell in love with the view, signed the papers a week later, and only then learned that the ground would not drain, or that there was no legal way to put a driveway in, or that the very spot they had picked for the house sat right in the flood path, and by then it was far too late, and they were standing on a piece of land they could do nothing at all with. I told you in an earlier video that if you want to build a free life on your own ground, the very first step is the land itself, and that the wrong piece of land can sink the whole plan before you ever start. So today I am going to teach you how to look at a piece of land properly, the way an old farmer looks at it, before you ever sign your name to a single thing. There are 6 things to check, just 6, and if you learn them, you can walk a piece of land, or even sit at your own kitchen table and look at it on the maps, and tell in about a minute whether it is good ground or bad ground. My grandfather taught me how to look at a piece of land before you buy it, the same way his grandfather taught him, the same way most of my people learn it as children, by walking the ground alongside someone older who points out the things that matter and the things that do not. Today I am going to walk you through those 6 checks, plain and simple, the way I would walk you through my own back fields, and I will tell you honestly, these are old questions farmers have always asked. The modern world has handed us a few new tools to help check them from home before you ever drive out to the property, and I will tell you about those too, because any sensible person ought to use them. Stay with me. By the end of this, you will know the 6 things to look for, and you will never again be a person who can be sold bad land. The first thing, the very first thing before anything else, is access. Can you get to the land? It sounds so simple it is almost silly to say out loud, but this is the question that traps more first-time buyers than any other, because access has 2 parts, and most folks only ever check the one. The first part is what they call physical access. Can you actually drive there? Is there a road that touches your land, or a way to put a driveway in without crashing through a creek, or a cliff, or a swamp? You stand at the edge of the public road and you look. How would I get a truck onto this place? If you cannot answer that easily, you have a problem sitting right in front of you. But the second part, the one folks miss, is legal access. Do you have the right to cross whatever sits between the public road and your land? Because here is the trap. A piece of land may look like it touches the road on the map, when really there are 100 feet of somebody else's woods between you and the pavement. Or there may be a path the neighbors have always used, but that path is on their deed, not yours. The neighbor can be polite about it for 30 years and then sell to a new fellow who puts up a gate, and of a sudden you cannot reach your own land. That is real. I have seen it happen, and people lose the whole value of what they bought over it. So you make sure the right to cross is written into the deed. They call that a deeded easement, or sometimes a recorded right-of-way, and it has to be written down properly and filed at the courthouse. A handshake from the neighbor is worth nothing at all once that neighbor is gone. If a piece of land has no road touching it and no deeded easement, it is what they call landlocked. And unless you can buy your way across somebody else's ground, it is worth almost nothing, no matter how pretty it looks. But if you do have road frontage, meaning your land actually runs along the public road for some distance, that is a great blessing. The more feet of road frontage, the better, because if you ever wanted to split that land into 2 or 3 pieces and sell some of it off later, you can, and one piece of ground becomes several, and what you paid for the whole becomes a small thing. Access first, always. No access, no land worth buying. The second thing is the soil. And here is where the costliest mistake of all hides, because you cannot see this one with your eyes from the road. The reason the soil matters so much, especially out in the country, away from the city sewer pipes, comes down to a single word: septic. If you are going to build a home out there, the wastewater from that home has to go somewhere, and out in the country it goes into a septic system in the ground beside the house. And a septic system only works if the ground beneath it will drink the water, if it will let the water trickle slowly down through the soil and away. Some ground does this beautifully. Sandy, well-drained soil, the kind that water just disappears into after a good rain. Other ground does not. Heavy clay that turns to gumbo when it is wet, or low ground where the water table sits a foot below the surface, will not take a septic at all. And here's the cruel part of it. The bad soil and the good soil can look exactly alike from the road. You cannot tell which is which by looking at the grass. The way you check it is what they call a percolation test, a PERC test for short. You dig a hole, fill it with water, and time how fast it drains away. The county health department or a soil scientist does this for you, and they charge you a few $100s to do it properly, and they will hand you a piece of paper telling you whether the soil will support a septic or not. Why does this matter so much? Because a piece of country land that can take a septic might be worth $50,000. The very same piece of land, identical to your eye, that cannot take a septic, might be worth $8,000. The same trees, the same grass, the same view, but one will let you build a home and the other never will. That is real, and I have watched it happen. So here is the rule. Never close on rural land you mean to build on until you have a PERC test in your hand showing the soil will support a septic. Most contracts will let you make the PERC test a condition, meaning if the test fails, you walk away and get your money back. You use that. It is the single most important piece of paper in the whole purchase. And one honest piece of news besides. A septic system itself, when you build it, will cost you somewhere from $6,000 to $20,000 depending on the type. Build that into your plan. It is real money, but it is a one-time cost, and you will never have a sewer bill again as long as you live. The third thing is the slope. How steep is the ground? You walk it or you look at it on the satellite picture where the elevation lines are drawn close together for the steep ground and far apart for the flat. Flat ground is cheap to build on. You set your foundation, you dig your well, you run your driveway, and the ground cooperates with you every step. Steep ground fights you at every step instead. The foundation costs more. The driveway has to be cut into the hillside. The septic field has to be engineered for the slope, and the water runs off and takes your topsoil right along with it. A little slope is fine, even good, because it helps the water drain away from the house. But somewhere past 10 or 15 feet of drop for every 100, slope becomes a real expense, and past that, a serious one. There are folks who build on mountain land, beautiful land with views you cannot get anywhere else, and they make it work. But they spend a great deal of money making it work, and you had better know that going in. Here is the simple farmer's check. Walk the spot where you mean to put the house. If you would not want to push a loaded wheelbarrow across it, then neither will the truck pouring your foundation, and neither will the water running off your roof. And look around at the other houses in the area. Are they built on slope like yours, or are they nestled into flat pockets that somebody else already noticed were better? If everyone else is on the flats and your spot is on the steep, you ought to ask yourself why. The fourth thing is water. where it goes, and where it stays. The people who do this for a living call it the environmental check. You stand on a piece of land in dry weather and it looks just fine. Come back after 3 days of hard rain and you may see a very different picture. The water collects in the low spots. The streams that ran small in summer run high in the spring. Whole patches of ground that look like meadow turn out to be wetland. Soft ground that holds water year-round, where you cannot legally build, cannot legally fill, cannot legally cross with a driveway, by laws meant to protect those places. And the laws are serious about it. The other thing is the floodplain. Every county now has a map showing the areas the rivers cover when they flood, what they call the 100-year flood zone, the area that gets wet roughly once in a long lifetime. You do not want to build in that zone. You do not even want most of your land in that zone, because flood insurance is costly, and the bank may not even lend on a house that sits there. And there is a worse one called the floodway, which is the river's actual channel when it runs high, where you cannot build at all by law. So here is the simple check, and any good soul can do it. Visit the land after a hard rain. Walk it then, not on the sunny, dry day the seller wanted you to come out. Look for the wet spots. Look at where the water sits. Look at where the ditches run. Then, back home, look up the wetlands map and the flood map for that county. They are both free online on the county website or on the federal mapping sites the English world has put up. If you see big blue patches on your land on those maps, you do not just shrug and assume it will be fine. You ask and you confirm, and you walk away if you must. Land with a small creek running through one corner can be a wonderful blessing. Land that is mostly wet ground is a piece of paper you will not be able to do much of anything with. The fifth thing is what the place looks like from the road, what the city folk call the street view. Now you may say, Elias, I am going to drive out and walk every piece of land I am serious about. And good for you, you absolutely should. But before you make a trip of 2 hours each way to see 10 properties, the English have given you a tool that lets you stand on the road in front of just about any address in this country and look around without ever leaving your kitchen. They call it Street View, and it is one of the genuinely useful modern things, because it shows you what neither the listing photos nor the satellite picture ever will. It shows you what your daily view will look like when you pull out of your own driveway. Here is what you are looking for. Is the road in front of the place pretty? Are the neighboring houses cared for? Or is the place across the road piled up with junked cars, broken machinery, and a tarp that has been blowing in the wind for 10 years? Now, I am not going to speak ill of a man for what he keeps on his own ground. That is his business, and I would not want anyone judging mine. But if you are going to live there for the next 20 years and pull out of that driveway every morning, then that view is your view, and you ought to know it before you sign anything. The same goes for power lines running overhead, a busy road right at your door, a cell tower, a billboard, a noisy industrial yard down the lane. All the things the listing photographs were so carefully framed to leave out. The road view tells the truth. Sit at the kitchen table, pull up the address, look around, and if it looks fine, then make the trip to walk the ground in person. If it does not look fine, you have just saved yourself a day's driving and the disappointment of falling in love with a place you should never buy. The sixth thing is what sits around the land. The satellite view, the bird's eye look straight down. Now you stand back, way back. Zoom out and look at what is within a half mile, a mile, 2 miles of the place. Because the land you are looking at can be beautiful, and the land right next to it can ruin it. What are you looking for? The big things first. Hog farms, the large operations that hold thousands of pigs in one tight space. These are real working farms doing real work, and I respect a farmer as much as any man, but I will tell you plain, you do not want to build your home downwind of one. The smell on a hot, still summer day will keep your windows shut for weeks at a stretch, and there is no fixing it after you have moved in. The same goes for the big poultry operations, the large dairies, the feedlots. Find them on the picture. Note which way the wind generally comes from in that region. If the operation sits upwind of your land, that is a serious mark against the place. Look for the junkyards and the scrap yards. They show up clear as day on the bird's eye picture, all the metal and the color where there ought to be field or trees. Look for quarries, which throw dust for miles when the wind is right. Look for logging operations that may turn your peaceful piece of woods into the edge of a clear cut next year. Look for landfills, train tracks, busy roads, wind towers, and the big solar farms going in. None of these are necessarily ruinous, but every one of them is a thing you ought to know about before you pay for the place, not after. And look for the good things too: a church, a small family farm, well-kept neighbors, a fishing pond. Sometimes the satellite picture tells you the place is even better than you had thought. 6 checks: access, soil, slope, water, the road view, and the wider view. That is the whole list. Walk through them in that order, and you will catch the things that ruin land before they ever ruin you. Now you may say, 60 seconds, Elias, that is not near enough time to do all of that. And here is the truth of it. The first walkthrough is 60 seconds. Once you know how to do this, you can sit at the kitchen table with the maps and the pictures up on a screen and run through all 6 checks on a piece of land in about a minute, just to decide whether it is worth a serious look. Many pieces will fail on the very first check, and you can stop right there. The ones that pass all 6 on that first quick look, those are the ones you go and visit in person. Those are the ones you pay a soil scientist to test. Those are the ones you might actually buy. The 60 seconds is just the first screen. After that comes the careful work, the perk test, the title search, the title insurance, the proper survey, the walking of the boundaries alongside the seller. You never skip those. Now I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters. The reason most folks lose money on bad land is not that the bad land is hidden. It is that nobody ever taught them to look. The seller will show you the prettiest hour on the prettiest day. The listing photographs are taken from the one corner where the trees frame the view just so. Nobody puts a sign at the edge of the field that says, "This soil will not drain. This corner floods. There is no legal way to cross my neighbor's woods." Those things you have to find out for yourself by knowing what to ask. This is old knowledge. My grandfather knew it. His grandfather knew it. The people who bought farmland 100 and 200 years ago knew to walk the place after a heavy rain, to dig a hole and watch the water go down, to ask the old man down the road what the place was like in the dead of winter. Modern people have lost this. Most folks today have only ever bought a house in a neighborhood where everything was already worked out for them, the streets and the water and the sewer all running to the door. So when they look at a piece of country land for the first time, they look at it the way they would look at a house in town. They look at the view and they look at the price. They do not look at the ground. But the ground is the whole thing. The view will fade and the price will fade from your memory, but the ground will either let you live the life you came for or it will refuse. And nobody profits by teaching you to be careful. The seller profits when you do not ask. The agent's commission grows when the deal closes. The lender wants to lend. Nobody at that table is paid to slow you down. Only you. So you have to be the one who slows it down, who walks the ground, who checks the 6 things. And if you do, country land is one of the great blessings of this life. A few acres of your own ground, paid for, free and clear, with good soil and clean water and a road to it and decent neighbors. That is a foundation a family can build a whole life upon. My people have built our lives on that foundation for near 200 years in this same county. It is worth taking the time to choose the right piece. So here is what I want you to do. Before you so much as look at a for sale sign with any serious interest, walk through the 6 in your mind: access, soil, slope, water, road view, wider view. Write them down on a card and keep that card in your pocket when you go to look. And when you find a piece that interests you, do not let anybody rush you. The seller will say there are other offers. Sometimes there are, and sometimes there are not. The agent will say the property is moving fast, but that land has been sitting there 10,000 years, and it can sit a little longer while you do your homework. Get the perk test, get the title insurance, get the survey, walk it after a hard rain, pull up the maps and study the wider view, talk to the neighbors if you can. The good land will still be there when you have finished your checking, and the bad land you walked away from will be there too, waiting on somebody who did not check, and it will not be you who paid for it. Tell me down in the comments, have you ever bought a piece of land, or are you looking right now? And if you have ever been burned by a bad piece of ground, tell us all what got you, so the next person reading can be on the watch for it. The stories you all share teach the new folks more than I ever could. I read every single one. Next time, since you now know how to spot bad land, I am going to show you how to figure out what good land is actually worth, so that you do not overpay for a fine piece either. Knowing how to spot good ground is one half of the work. Knowing what to pay for it is the other half. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Until then, walk the ground, check the 6, never sign your name in a hurry, and remember that the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only now just starting to remember.